Have you ever thought a wedding was supposed to be the happiest day of your life? The lights, the music, the toasts, and smiles. But some weddings don't end with a honeymoon. They begin a nightmare with no end. The first story opens with a stranger, the bride's aunt's boyfriend, a man with a dead stare and scarred hands. He vanishes during the reception, leaving behind a trail of strange events that lead straight to the couple's new home. The second tale warns anyone still friends with their ex. A seemingly sweet wedding gift, a small teddy bear, hides inside it a watching eye. And worse, he's not just listening, he's getting closer every night. The final story takes you to a peaceful town where a single man thinks he's tired after a night shift. Until he wakes to find a woman in a wedding dress standing at the foot of his bed, whispering, "Where's my groom?" No gore, no jump scares, just small moments in ordinary life. But once you hear them, you'll never look at weddings the same way again. And don't click away too soon, because the final story might be the reason you'll never sleep alone on a rainy night again. Welcome to a place where eternal happiness isn't for everyone. John and Allie's wedding, held at a small church in Coral Gables, Florida in 2017, was supposed to be the happiest moment of their lives. Two families, close friends, and distant relatives gathered to witness a complete love story. But amidst the joyful celebration, a dark shadow quietly crept in, spreading a quiet unease no one dared to speak aloud. Allie's aunt Chelsea was one of those shadows, a tangled figure in the family. She had once been consumed by drugs and addiction, straining and isolating her from the rest of the family. Even so, Chelsea was invited. In keeping with the tradition, everyone felt obliged to follow. But Aunt Chelsea didn't come alone. With her was a man named Rob, a stranger who, from the moment John laid eyes on him, felt entirely out of place. Rob had a disheveled appearance, wearing a filthy gray polo shirt, arms covered in scars, and carrying a pungent, foul odor that thickened the air around him. When everyone gathered in the church's backyard for photos, the mood abruptly shifted. The joyful laughter became disjointed, replaced by awkward silences. Rob and Aunt Chelsea kept blurting out inappropriate stories, odd and ill-timed remarks that made bridesmaids, groomsmen, and guests quietly avert their eyes, dreading what they might say next. John felt all eyes drawn to the pair, but no one dared say anything. He just wanted them to disappear, to erase the tension from what should have been a perfect day. But that was impossible. Rob approached to shake John's hand. The handshake wasn't warm, but forceful, oppressive. His breath reeked of alcohol and cigarettes, his hand rough with the scars of endless fights. John flinched slightly and looked at Aunt Chelsea, who sat silently at the table, her eyes vacant and far from peace. The wedding gradually sank into a heavy atmosphere, with the source unmistakably at its center. Rob, Aunt Chelsea's dangerous former lover, quietly spreading a dread John had never imagined feeling on the most important day of his life. After the formal ceremony and the glowing photographs in the golden afternoon light, guests gradually moved into the cozy reception hall next to the church. John, the groom, found himself swept up in a blur of congratulations and upbeat music. But he couldn't shake the discomfort caused by the presence of Rob and Aunt Chelsea. Rob stayed close to Chelsea, but his constant interruptions with odd, sometimes outright rude remarks made the atmosphere increasingly suffocating. Bridesmaids and groomsmen forced polite smiles and avoided Rob's gaze because every time he spoke, conversations either fell silent or turned painfully awkward. John tried to remain courteous when Rob came up to shake his hand for the second time that day. But the stench of alcohol and cigarettes on his breath, paired with a probing stare, sent chills down John's spine. He suddenly noticed the scars on Rob's hands weren't just remnants of life's rough edges. They were signs of violence. Not long after, John noticed something even stranger. Rob had suddenly disappeared from the reception without anyone noticing. When he asked Aunt Chelsea, she admitted she had no idea where he had gone or when. This unsettled John deeply. Part of him regretted not keeping a closer eye on Rob, and part feared that Rob might be up to something worse. Whispers began to spread among family and close friends. A few wedding gifts left in the reception area had mysteriously gone missing. No signs of forced entry, no witnesses. Only Rob had last been seen near that area. A church staff member was asked to announce the mic, reminding guests to keep an eye on a man named Rob. John and Allie asked a few relatives to discreetly check the venue to ensure nothing else was wrong. But their efforts turned up nothing. Even Chelsea's phone had mysteriously disappeared. She couldn't reach Rob or trace his phone's location. Worry escalated when John's family called the police. But with no concrete evidence, no security footage showing Rob's actions, and Chelsea's phone off or lost, the authorities couldn't intervene meaningfully. John looked at Aunt Chelsea and saw a deep worry in her eyes, a look he had never seen before. She confessed that she and Rob had argued, that he believed John and Allie didn't like him, and that they were trying to sabotage everything. That was the last thing John heard about Rob on his wedding day. A veiled threat that cast a dark, heavy cloud over what should have been the happiest day of his life. After the police were called, the atmosphere at the wedding grew even more tense. John and Allie tried to remain calm, but their eyes betrayed an underlying worry. They didn't know what Rob might do next. Aunt Chelsea, once the biggest concern of the day, now sat silently at a table, saying little. As night fell, close friends gathered at the hotel for a small after-party, trying to shake off the lingering unease. People laughed, music played, but the mood was still heavy. Rob's shadow lingered in everyone's mind. Suddenly, Allie received a text message from Aunt Chelsea's phone. It contained a single line: "I forgot the gift." Allie assumed it was just a polite reminder from her aunt and didn't think much of it. But afterward, Chelsea's phone went silent, unreachable. A few minutes later, Allie got a call from the same number. When she answered, there was nothing but heavy breathing on the other end. Cold and eerie, like something straight out of a horror film. No voice, just an unsettling sound as if someone was deliberately trying to scare her. Shaken, Allie called her grandmother, the only person close to and understanding of Aunt Chelsea. Her grandmother confirmed that Chelsea was at her house and hadn't gone anywhere. Allie tried calling the number again several times, but no one picked up, only sighs, followed by sudden disconnections. John began to feel that the threat from Rob didn't end with the wedding. They feared he knew their home address and could show up when they were unprotected. That night, when John and Allie, too drunk to go home, stayed elsewhere, they asked John's father to watch over the house. Late at night, John's father texted them repeatedly, saying he heard strange noises around the home. Soft footsteps at the window, irregular knocking that put him on edge. He even called the police, but no trace of an intruder was found. Rob's presence had turned what should have been a perfect wedding into a lingering cycle of fear and anxiety. Despite the police's efforts, the lack of evidence made catching Rob nearly impossible. John and Allie ultimately decided to distance themselves from Aunt Chelsea and cut off all contact. They knew their safety had to come first, even if it meant sacrificing family ties. Time passed, but the fear of Rob never truly left John and Allie. Though the tension of the wedding day slowly faded, the shadow of that strange man continued to haunt them whenever night fell. Their new home, the place that was supposed to be a peaceful sanctuary, had become somewhere they no longer felt safe. Every knock at the door, every passing figure on the porch sent their hearts racing, their chests tightening. Allie suffered from frequent insomnia, her eyes red and weary, while John grew distant, constantly on edge. They knew Rob wasn't just a bitter ex. He was a symbol of invasion, of boundaries shattered beyond repair. The teddy bear gift, once harmless and sweet, had become an icon of surveillance, of a nightmare without end. John and Allie pursued legal action, seeking protection through the law, but nothing could guarantee that Rob wouldn't return one day. They lived under a constant cloud of fear, always wondering, was someone watching them from the shadows, through hidden devices? Their lives were forever changed, not just by a ruined wedding, but by a lingering dread that settled deep like a wound that would never heal. And their story stands as a warning to everyone. Never ignore the smallest signs, because sometimes nightmares begin with the most innocent-looking gifts. John and Trisha's wedding was supposed to mark a new chapter in their lives, one filled with happiness and peace. But from the moment Kyle, Trisha's ex-boyfriend, showed up on their special day, John felt a chill creep into the atmosphere. Kyle came alone, without a date, and his eyes never left Trisha, like a persistent shadow of the past. After the wedding ended and guests began to leave, Kyle unexpectedly dropped by John and Trisha's home. He brought a gift, a small, soft brown teddy bear holding a heart embroidered with their initials. Trisha smiled and accepted it, thinking it was a polite, friendly gesture from an ex. But that night, as the house settled into silence, John suddenly heard a strange noise coming from the teddy bear. A faint vibration, source unknown. A cold shiver ran down his spine. He couldn't ignore it. Carefully opening up the teddy bear, John was stunned to discover that inside wasn't just ordinary stuffing, but a hidden electronic device. A tiny camera was cleverly concealed behind the bear's left eye. A microphone was tucked into its ear, connected by delicate wires to a mysterious Bluetooth transmitter. Everything about it screamed surveillance, not sentiment. John suddenly realized a horrifying truth. They were being watched, not by an unseen ghost, but by someone who had once been a significant part of their lives, Kyle. He had infiltrated their private world, observing their every move, every intimate moment they thought was safe. What was once a sanctuary had now become a prison, filled with suspicion, dread, and fear. John and Trisha were left reeling from the terrifying discovery that the one who had once loved them had become their most dangerous betrayer. After discovering the hidden camera inside the teddy bear, John sat frozen on the floor, the box cutter still trembling in his hand. Trisha, seeing the tangle of wires and devices pulled from the bear's stuffing, burst into tears. A wave of betrayal filled the room, not just from Kyle's actions, but from their naivete in brushing off their initial instincts. "I thought he'd changed," Trisha murmured. "I thought we could be friends." John said nothing. His mind was replaying every moment Kyle had been present at the wedding, visiting their house. Even the cold stare during that handshake, the smile that never reached his eyes. They immediately took the teddy bear to the police. Officers confirmed the device was a mini Bluetooth camera, capable of streaming data to a phone or temporarily storing it. All signs pointed to Kyle having planned this, deliberately. And worse, he may have started watching them even earlier than they suspected. In a state of confusion, Trisha opened her phone and checked old messages. Kyle had sent a few after the wedding, seemingly harmless at the time. Wishing you two happiness. Sleep well. Where's the little bear? Back then, Trisha thought they were sweet. Now, they were chilling proof of an unhealthy obsession. John urged Trisha to cut off all contact with Kyle. She agreed, though her eyes still carried hesitation, part shame, part fear. But before she could block him, Kyle acted first. He blocked Trisha on Instagram, then on her phone. One final message came through, laced with venom. "You've said enough. I've heard enough." John went cold. That night, lying in bed, they both stared at the ceiling. The soft glow of the nightlight couldn't chase away the suffocating air. Then John heard it, a faint vibration. Again. No phones were nearby. No alerts had gone off. But the sound was identical to the teddy bear's vibrating hum from the night before. He jumped up, turned on every light, and began checking all the remaining wedding gifts. They tore open every box, dismantled every decoration, and even unplugged the TV. Nothing. But the unease had sunk in, like the shadow of someone who hadn't truly gone, as if Kyle was still watching from somewhere. And they realized one thing. This time, Kyle didn't want to be friends anymore. The next morning, John woke earlier than usual. He couldn't sleep, not after everything that had happened. While Trisha was still asleep, he quietly checked the home security system. They'd never had a reason to install cameras before, but now the house felt exposed, as if they had let a stranger into the most sacred space. There was nothing unusual on the footage. No movement, no sign of intrusion. But John couldn't shake the feeling. He decided to take the device found inside the teddy bear to a technician to extract any data. At first, the technician was skeptical, but after examining the wiring and memory chip, he nodded. "We'll try to recover anything that's left," the technician said. "You should prepare yourself." That afternoon, John returned to the shop. The technician didn't say much, just handed him a USB and advised him to listen to it alone. But John knew he couldn't keep this from Trisha. That night, they sat together on the couch, every light in the house turned on, curtains drawn tight. John pressed play. At first, there was static. Buried beneath it were familiar sounds. Footsteps, laughter, voices, their voices, audio from their bedroom. Trisha laughing. John softly called her name. Then, silence. And then, Kyle's voice. It came through clearly, low, gravelly, disturbingly gentle. "You still look the same. Nothing's changed, has it?" Trisha burst into tears. John sat frozen, fists clenched. Then came the sound of breathing, slow, steady, like someone sitting very close. Then the sound of the teddy bear being placed back on a shelf, a soft click, and finally, a whisper. "I'll remember every second of this. Forever." Trisha trembled. He heard, "Everything?" John didn't answer. He simply stood, checked every window, and armed the security system. That night, they didn't sleep. It felt like someone was standing just outside the door, separated by only a pane of glass. The next day, they brought all the evidence to the police. With the recording, the surveillance device, and the history between Trisha and Kyle, the report was accepted quickly. They filed for a restraining order. But then the police said something that made John go cold. "The device in the teddy bear doesn't store data. That means he had to be nearby every time it was recording." The restraining order was approved by the court in less than a week. Kyle was legally required to stay at least 500 feet away from Trisha and John and was ordered to pay emotional damages. The court fined him over $150,000, a staggering amount that made Kyle vanish from the radar. But his disappearance wasn't the end. Trisha still dreamed of him. She would wake in the middle of the night, drenched in cold sweat, always hearing that familiar whisper echoing in her ears. "I'll remember every second of this. Forever." John changed every lock in the house. He installed 4 more cameras and hired private security. But every time he came home, stepped into the living room, where the teddy bear had once sat, he still felt like the space no longer belonged to him. Something had invaded it, leaving behind a permanent scar. One morning, as John stepped outside to collect the mail, he found something lying on the doorstep, a small stuffed heart, clearly cut from a teddy bear. No box, no note, just the heart, clean, pristine, and new. No one saw who left it. The cameras showed nothing. The police couldn't act without evidence, and Trisha didn't want to hear anything more. She kept the lights on at all times, living in a constant state of vigilance. John had only one thought to hold on to. Kyle might be off the grid now, but in the dark, where there are no cameras, no police, he's still watching. John lived alone in a small town, quiet, safe, and maybe a little too quiet. It was the kind of place where people never locked their cars, where neighbors still said good morning through the kitchen window. After a 12-hour shift at the factory, all John ever wanted was to come home, make a simple dinner, and stretch out on the sofa to re-watch The Sopranos. That night was no different. A cold drizzle misted the air, and his small wooden house creaked with every soft gust of wind. John had a late dinner, took a quick shower, then settled in. A warm blanket draped over his legs. The TV hummed softly in the background as he drifted off, until he woke up, suddenly. It was 3:08 a.m. The TV was still on, but something had stirred him. A soft noise, like the floor creaking, directly above where he lay. John held his breath. The old wooden house often made sounds at night. Wind, expanding beams, mice in the walls. But this was different. These were footsteps, slow, deliberate, like someone tiptoeing in the dark. 1, 2, 3 steps. Right above him. John sat up straight. His hand found the remote and flicked the channel, using the flash of the screen for light. As the TV lit the room, his heart nearly stopped. At the foot of the bed, standing quietly as if she'd been there for a long time, was a woman in a white wedding dress, her veil hanging low, hiding her face. She didn't speak, just stood there, her head tilted slightly, as if waiting for an answer. John froze, eyes wide, breath caught, and then the woman whispered, "Where's my groom?" That voice, dry, choked, and filled with rage. That question, "Where's my groom?" sounded like it had been whispered from the depths of a grave, dry, strained, uncertain whether it belonged to the living or to something long dead. John couldn't move. She stood there, veil hanging low past her chest, ghostly white under the pale blue flicker of the TV. Her wedding dress was tattered and stained, as if it had been dragged through dirt. The air in the room shifted, damp and sickly sweet, the scent of dead flowers, or worse, rotting flesh. The woman repeated herself, louder this time, more urgent. "Where's my groom?" John sprang from the bed, feet hitting the freezing wood floor, scrambling away as fast as he could. She followed, not quickly, but deliberately. Each of her steps creaked like bones cracking. John raced down the hallway, dove into the bathroom, and slammed the door shut behind him. A few seconds later, the banging began. Thud, thud, thud. That same voice, now filled with fury, pierced through the wooden door. "I have to go to the wedding. "My groom is waiting." John trembled. His hand fumbled through his pajama pocket, searching for his phone. Thankfully, it was still there. He dialed 911, voice raspy. There's someone in my house, a woman, in a wedding dress." As he spoke, he heard it, sobbing. The voice had changed. Now it was weeping, desperate, and broken. "Please, I have to get married," she cried, her voice warped, like it echoed between two worlds. And then, silence. John pressed his ear to the door. No more crying, no footsteps, only his breath, fast, unsteady. He waited a few more minutes, then cracked the door open. The hallway was empty. No sign of the bride, no sound at all. He stepped out, glancing around. Bedroom, kitchen, front door, still locked. But when he approached the window to look out at the porch, his heart nearly stopped. There, under the dim glow of the street lamp, lying at the base of the steps, was her wedding veil. John couldn't take his eyes off the veil lying on the steps. It felt like a piece of someone. Shed skin, soaked from the night rain, and cold enough to chill the soul. It hadn't simply fallen. Someone had removed it, placed it there, like a message that needed no words. When the police arrived, John pointed outside. He told them about the woman in the wedding dress, about the question she kept repeating, "Where's my groom?" But the looks he received were filled with skepticism. They searched the house, sweeping their flashlights through every corner, the attic, and the bushes behind the house. Nothing. No footprints, no blood, no foreign objects. "Could be someone with a psychiatric history," one officer said. "We've had a few drifters in the area." Or, he paused, "You just got off a 12-hour shift. Exhaustion can make the mind see things." John didn't argue. When they left, he stood in the middle of the living room, feeling hollow, like he'd brushed up against the edge of madness. But deep down, he knew it wasn't imagination. He locked every window, secured the doors, embedded the kitchen knife into the nightstand by his bed, like a primal reflex. The rain had returned, heavier now, tapping on the windows like fingernails gently scratching glass. John lay down, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. Then, click. The sound of a light switch from the kitchen. John jolted upright. The lights didn't come on, but the switch had been flipped. He crept out, knife in hand. The air was thick, as if someone had just left the room seconds ago. The floor was icy cold, with a trail of wet footprints stretching from the front door into the kitchen, then vanishing. No one there. Heart racing, head fogged with adrenaline, John turned back toward the bedroom and froze. On his bed, beneath the blanket, lay a woman. A white wedding dress clung to her body. Her hands rested perfectly folded over her stomach, like a corpse laid in a coffin. He couldn't breathe. Then she sat up. No hands, no neck movement, just pulled upward, as if by invisible strings. The veil slowly slipped down from her face, revealing ghost-white skin, hollow black eyes, and a slow smile tearing open across her face like a rip in old fabric. "I've found my groom." The whisper rang inside John's head, not from her mouth, but from everywhere, from the ceiling, from the wooden floor, from inside his chest. John doesn't remember exactly what happened next. All he knew was that when he came to, he was lying on the bedroom floor, cold sweat beading on his forehead, the kitchen knife still clenched in his aching hand. There was no one on the bed, no wedding dress, no scent of decaying flowers, just disheveled sheets and the steady rhythm of rain tapping against the window pane. He checked every room. Everything was exactly as it should be. No signs of a break-in, not a soul in sight, not a single trace, except one. On the pillow where he lay his head every night, there was a faint red lipstick mark, the shape of lips, clear, cold and soft, as if freshly pressed. The next day, John didn't go to work. He sat for hours, staring at the pillow, knife still in hand. Every little noise, the wind, the creak of wood, made him flinch. He tore down the curtains, taped the windows shut with newspaper. He didn't want to look outside, didn't want to see anyone, or anything, looking in. By the following week, he moved out, left everything behind, even the pillow with the lipstick. People said he left suddenly, like he was fleeing something. Some claimed he'd gone mad. Others whispered that on rainy nights, you could still see the bedroom light of the old house flick on at exactly 3 a.m. And if you're quiet, if you step close enough to the window, you might hear a whisper float out from the dark room. "Where's my groom?" But don't answer, because if she hears you, you might be the next groom. 3 stories, 3 weddings, but no one lived happily ever after. One man vanished during the celebration, leaving behind a gift that was never unwrapped. One silently installed a camera to capture every breath of the one he used to love. And one is still out there, searching for her groom in the rain beneath a mud-stained wedding dress. If you're feeling a chill down your spine right now, remember, darkness doesn't need a door to enter your home. It only needs the smallest crack in your trust. If you enjoy that skin-prickling sensation, spine-tingling tales grounded in eerie reality, hit the like button to help this video reach more curious souls like yourself. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next episode, because nightmares always return the moment you let your guard down. And finally, tell us in the comments below, would you still dare to open a wedding gift again? Which story will keep you up tonight? We read every comment, even the ones posted at 3 a.m.